Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 149 of Kouryer podcast. Our today's guest is Mr. Cullen Mathew Cole. He's a lead background and concept artist with experience in the animation industry from Austin, Texas. He also worked on IPs such as Tomb Raider, Blood of Zeus, and Seis Monos, which we're going to talk about them in the podcast as well. And of course, before we begin, I need to quickly mention something. In the captions, you can see, like in the for contact section, there's his Instagram ID, of course. There's his art station, and also in the website section, there's a website called, I put the link of it in down below. It's called Wingfox. If you go there, there's like a new course he's working on and he's going to release. And the more support it gets, probably the content of it will be much more, or it could help lift off the whole thing, basically in a nutshell. And so if you're interested in that, definitely check it out. If you're into background for animations, concept design and all of that with Blender, like the whole pipeline, it's there. So, don't miss that if you're interested. And well, with that being said, let's jump into the first question I ask everyone. Give us a little introduction on how you got into the world of visual arts and design. What was the spark for you, which, made you go, I want to become an artist?
Well, it's kind of something that started when I was very young. I've just always been into cartoons, animation, video games. Ever since I was a little kid, I was always doodling and drawing in my sketchbook. And I think I always knew that that's kind of where I wanted to go. Of course, you don't really think about it until you get into school. Oh, this is my dog in the background. But yeah, I took art classes in school, and that kind of furthered that notion of wanting to go into the field that I'm in. And so I ended up going to college for animation. And while I was there, I did a lot of character art and a lot of character animation and all that stuff. And I kind of found out that I wasn't really interested in actually doing animation. And my last year there, I stumbled upon concept art and background design, pretty much through Feng Zhu Design, pretty popular concept artist. And that's kind of what led me to be where I am today. Just kind of it's always kind of been there since I was a kid that I've been interested in art. And I eventually just got into background design through college.
All right. And well, during the time that you said, I kind of want to ask you something. When you were like 18 or 17, and those are usually the years that people think, all right, should I go to college? What should I do for my future and all that stuff? But for you, from the get-go, did you were sure that you want to go to the arts route, or were there doubts initially?
I was pretty sure. I didn't really have any doubts. That was kind of all that I did. I didn't really care for anything else in terms of education wise, and that's pretty much all I wanted to do, and so that's what I chose. I guess it was just a matter of choosing what field of art to get into, but it was a pretty easy decision as I was super into anime and animation, so that's what I went for.
Interesting. And well, we're going to talk about some of the your favorite animes and stuff later on in this episode of the podcast. But for now, let me ask you something else. What is your main branch of design that you're focusing on right now, and tell us about your experience from the start of it until now. Like, of course, in the introduction, I mentioned that you're a lead background and concept artist right now. But could you elaborate on that a bit? Like, when did you start it? Like, how did you get into this specifically and all that stuff?
Sure. So, like I was saying, I went to college for that animation degree, and while I was there, I kind of learned I didn't really like doing animation itself, but I still wanted to be in that field, so I was looking for something else to do, and I kind of stumbled upon Feng Zhu's channel on YouTube, and he has all those free podcast videos where he's streaming art and giving out free advice and all this stuff. And I just pretty much watched a bunch of his videos, and that got me into doing backgrounds. And so my last semester of college, that's pretty much all I focused on. And after school, I didn't have any good enough portfolio, of course. I kind of had to, I took some online mentorships and for background design, and through those I learned what I was lacking. And basically it was just the amount of work that I needed to put into it. I didn't understand to get to that more professional quality level. I needed to be putting in way more work than I was. And so the past maybe like 2-3 years after college, I took on a couple of odd jobs here and there while I was working on portfolio stuff and doing some mentorships. And that's pretty much how I got started. And then I eventually got the job that I have now at Powerhouse. So yeah, my focus since then has been background design.
That's kind of interesting. Like this sort is kind of interesting when you said that, like, you were doing some odd jobs, while trying to work on your portfolio. That's kind of like, relatable, I think, for a lot of people who are like listening, and to myself as well. Because I'm currently like, doing teaching, and also like in 2 months, like, if like I have some plans, like in 2 months, if some of my plans don't really go well, I am going to work as like, as well, like, any odd jobs I could get my hands on, just to pay the rent, and in my spare time work on my portfolio and, skills. But yeah, I mean, it like, I would say, like, it's kind of like a nice thing, because in the end, when you reach the goal of wanting a job, it kind of makes you really appreciate it,
Yeah, it's definitely part of the process, I think. Unless you're super amazing out of the gate, which some people are, most people end up, having to do those odd jobs and working their way up, just kind of staying alive until you can get to where you want to be.
Yeah, exactly. And how does your design process usually go anytime you want to start working on a piece? Like, what does the structure of your pipeline look like? Could you explain to us?
Sure. I think it kind of depends on the project, or if I'm doing, a concept or design for work, it might differ than if I was doing it for myself. So, like at work, we go, it's kind of changed a little bit in the past few years since Blender has come out as well. Our studio started using Blender, which before we were using SketchUp. And essentially we would typically start with like, maybe doing some rough sketches or some rough, drawings in Photoshop. And that would then lead to doing some basic blocking models that we can then push our designs further. We would draw on top of some 3D and design, take the designs further. And then we would basically push the 3D to match closer to the designs. And currently we would be adding like texturing and lighting to our scenes in 3D. And then we take those to like a full render and paint on top of that as our final backgrounds. But at work, we set up scenes based on, the scripts that we get for our shows. And typically those consist of doing multiple areas in one location, because there's going to be, multiple scenes that take place within one location that we design. So we're kind of almost level designers in a way, because we have to kind of design all the scenes that are going to be taking place in that one location, whether it be like a city courtyard or something that has multiple spots the character goes to. Sometimes it takes a lot more in the 3D versus the 2D, but it kind of just depends. And if I was doing projects on my own, sometimes I don't even use 3D. I'll just sketch in Photoshop, and then I'll do like black and white compositions, or sometimes I'll just do I'll just take a black color and I'll do something where I'm kind of painting just the shadows that are in the scene or the dark areas, and I'll come back and use that to inform the rest of my painting. So process definitely kind of depends on what project I'm doing, if it's for work or if it's for my own thing, or whatever. It kind of just depends, because sometimes I'll use 3D on my own too. I'll make like kit bashes and set up scenes that way, kind of similar to what we do at work. But I'll probably be less organized if I was doing it for myself, just because I'm trying to focus less on my personal pieces in terms of like how much mental energy I'm putting in. Since I use so much of that energy at work, it's kind of hard for me to spend more time and energy outside of work on those projects. But yeah, that's pretty much it.
All right. Here's an interesting question. What was the first art job paycheck you ever got, and what was it for, and how did you feel at the time when you got basically the first ever salary you made out of art?
So my first job was it was a contract job. I worked for it's technically not necessarily art, but it was similar field. I was doing some oil and gas 3D models for a company that was basically, they were designing like 3D apps where they would build 3D versions of their equipment so that they could monitor like when something was going wrong with their equipment, and we had to model and design those 3D versions of their equipment basically. So that was kind of my first art related job, somewhat. Yeah, it felt good to kind of finally do something art related, even if it wasn't completely what I wanted to do. And I think the paycheck at the time wasn't really anything all that great, but it was something that was more what I wanted to do, and I was willing to do it for less money at the time. But yeah, it felt good.
All right. And all right, let's talk about some general stuff I want to ask you. Previously, like, a couple of minutes ago, I mentioned that, about some, particular animes, and, so first of all, because that's initially one of the factors that contributed to you choosing animation as your major in college. But I was wondering, is there any particular anime you're watching right now, and also your favorite animes of all time, of course?
The favorite anime is always a tough question to answer, but in terms of ones that maybe stuck with me over the years and got me more interested, I think it's kind of a generic one, but Dragon Ball was always a big contributor to my interest in animation. I watched Dragon Ball since I was a little kid, and I kind of grew up with it as it progressed and came out. Dragon Ball Z, GT, and then now we have Super. So that was always a big contender. A couple other ones, maybe like Yu Yu Hakusho. When I was in high school, that was a big one for me. One of my friends in like 8th grade got me super into anime, and I started watching a lot of shows at that point in time, and that was one of the bigger ones, or something like Inuyasha or Fullmetal Alchemist. kind of those mainstream bigger ones that were coming out in the late 90s, early 2000s that were getting me into the animation. But right now I'm watching Ranking of Kings. It's an ongoing anime that's happening right now, and it's really good, man. It's an interesting story. It's new and it's refreshing, and the art style is kind of different and interesting. The characters are a little bit more simplified, and it lets them have really cool, fun animation, and the background style is also nice. It kind of goes back to like a traditional style anime background where it feels more like it's hand painted, almost with like watercolor or gouache. So it's kind of nice, refreshing take.
All right. And also, here's the thing on your IG bio, you mentioned 3 IPs, like I think Blood of Zeus, and then there was Tomb Raider, and also what was it called? I'm sorry, I'll say Manos. So here's the thing: on your ArtStation, I see work for 2 of them, but I don't see, like, I couldn't find work for Tomb Raider. Is that a new IP you're working on?
So Tomb Raider is Powerhouse's and Netflix's upcoming show. It's not out yet. So I'm currently the lead background artist for that show. So yeah, we're working on that right now.
It's an animation, of course, right?
Yes.
Oh, interesting.
So animated Tomb Raider series.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, that would be why there's nothing posted for that.
Yeah, I mean, of course, yeah, NDAs and all and everything, yeah.
Yeah. I did a tiny bit of work on Castlevania as well, but kind of just a really small part on season 4.
Oh, I think there was another one on the podcast who was working on Castlevania. Do you know Jose Vega?
Yeah, I know Jose.
Oh, yeah. I think he was working. I don't know. I'm not sure if he was the lead or something, but yeah, I think he worked on Castlevania pretty much extensively.
Yeah, I believe he was the lead from season 2 to 4.
Yeah, super cool guy. Shout out to Jose Vega. You can check out his episode, and I think it was in alongside the range of 30s, like it was 30, 34 or 35 or something. I don't remember. But you guys can check it out. Recommend it. And
yeah, he's an amazing guy.
Yeah,
he's awesome.
And all right, let me address the elephant in the room. Your shirt. Stone moves, rock climbing. And stuff. And I've seen some of your posts that you're also a rock climber. And speaking of that, first, of course, tell us the story of the whole thing, how it started, and why did you prefer rock climbing to other sports, and also let's talk about some health benefits of just working out, and why we should always not ignore working out and our health when we're working on because our jobs are super sedentary, and so yeah, the long time detriments would show themselves in a couple of decades later, so let's talk about it.
Yeah, most definitely. I got into rock climbing in college. My first year there, one of my friends from high school, he was basically my only friend from high school that went to the same college that I did. So I ended up hanging out with him a bunch my first year, and he wanted to go, and he was inviting me, and so that's kind of how I got started. We went to our college actually had a rock wall in the gym, and so that's where I got started. I started climbing there, and while I was there, I got really into it. I was climbing 4 or 5 days a week, and I found out that they had competitions that were collegiate competitions, and so I did a bunch of those in college. And I don't know. When I started climbing, I just fell in love with it. I really enjoy the challenge and the physical aspect of it, and it's problem solving as well. You're not just climbing up a wall. it's certain, they have certain levels of difficulty, and each one comes with a unique set of problem solving. And the higher you go in the difficulty, it's not linear. It's very it has a very radical jump in terms of difficulty as you get into the harder stuff. But I was never really into sports growing up. Actually, I grew up in a family that was playing football and baseball and all the other kinds of sports. I mean, I played soccer when I was like in middle school or junior, not middle school. When I was much younger, actually, maybe like 10 or 11, I was playing kids soccer. But I never took to any sports really after that. I kind of was the nerdy guy in middle school and high school growing up, doing art and watching anime, playing video games. And but yeah, once I got to college, I got really into rock climbing, and kind of just stuck with me ever since then, and I never dropped it. And yeah, you asked me about my shirt, is actually from a gym that I used to climb and work at after college. One of the odd jobs that we were talking about that I did was I worked at a climbing gym, this one. And I was still really into it at the time too. I was climbing like 5 days a week, and when you work at a gym, you get a key to the gym, and you get to just kind of go whenever you want. And so I was just training all the time and enjoying it while I could. And yeah, I still do it now. I climb 2 or 3 days a week, not as much as I used to, but I still really enjoy it. And I'm actually going on a trip in a couple of weeks to go climb outside. So yeah.
All right, awesome. And yeah, I mean, one of my some of my own personal favorites, sports are also, one of them is endurance running, like marathon endurance running. I just like the satisfaction of when you push through that mental hurdle that's keeping you back, and you just run, for example, like a half marathon or something, because during those times you kind of you want to give up 90 times at least, and when you kind of overcome those feelings and finally get to that point, it's really satisfying. And also, of course, martial arts, especially wrestling and jiu-jitsu and all of that. So it's always good to have a side hobby that kind of keeps your health in check. And I highly recommend everyone to try to find it for themselves, something that's fun, because when it's fun you can be consistent with it.
Yeah, I guess I didn't really answer that part of the question about keeping up with your health and how it affects your job and your mental state. I think for me it's also kind of a getaway from doing work in art. It's a little bit of a break, since rock climbing is not just straight working out. It's something that's fun and entertaining as well, and there's a social aspect to it too. You go climb with friends, or people that are there, and climbing a lot of the time is kind of just sitting on the ground and falling off the wall. So a lot of the times you're kind of just chatting with your friends while you're resting, or you're waiting to get back on the wall. But yeah, I think in terms of being physical and being active, that it's definitely something everyone should be taking into mind. You got to stay healthy if you want to live longer, you want to prosper, right? You gotta be healthy if you want to do art as well. You can't just let your body waste away. You have to keep your mental and physical health up. And like you said, we sit all day, right? Our jobs in the art industry, you sit all day and you draw, or you draw on a pad or whatever you're doing. I think as well, you have to kind of keep up with what I call antagonist training. I had to do it for climbing and for sitting at a computer. Is that you're using your wrists and your hands a lot, and your fingers, and your shoulder or whatever you're doing, and you know, making sure you're keeping track of your posture and all that too. But there's a lot of exercises and stretches you can do that can help kind of fight against what sitting at a desk is doing all day long to your body. So it's definitely wise to be physically active and keep in mind that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah, definitely, especially the part about postures. Sorry, I'm about to sneeze for a second. Jesus, it doesn't come. You know when you want to sneeze and it doesn't come? All right, now it's gone. And yeah, so I was saying, like, you know, posture is actually super important because, yeah, I mean, after like just even not a month, like even a week of like bad posture, if you look in the mirror and you're like, what is wrong with me? Why do I look like a gargoyle? Mm-hmm. If you don't take care of your posture, but if you do, you always like, all right, I need to sit like this. I have to sit straight. You won't get those problems. And of course, investing in a good chair is also super essential.
Yeah, it's kind of funny that you mentioned that because in rock climbing, if all you're doing is rock climbing and you say you're like a really strong rock climber, you get what we call like the climber's hunch, where your shoulders are like really rolled forward and you just look like you have a really big hunchback. But it's mainly because in climbing you're doing a lot of pulling down, right? You're doing a lot of pulling exercises, and so if you're not keeping track of doing antagonist training, which is what I just said, you can kind of get bad posture from that as well. So it kind of plays in hand for keeping my posture up and my muscles together, fighting against bad posture from sitting all day and also from climbing. So for me, it's like a hand-in-hand thing.
Mm-hmm. All right. And who are your favorite artists and designers that have inspired you the most?
That's a tough question. There's tons of artists, man, especially nowadays. Everyone's just so good. It's hard to choose who could be a favorite, but it's probably a generic answer. But everyone's always a fan of Ghibli artists, but Kazuo Oga is definitely an inspiration for me. John Singer Sargent is a big artist up there for me. In college, I was really into watercolors, and so I was doing a lot of that at the time. And Sargent was definitely someone I was looking up to. Maybe more contemporary artists, some people like John Park, Quentin Maybill, or trying to think of artists off the top of my head, but having a little trouble. Kalen Schock is definitely someone who's inspired me. I actually took his mentorship years ago from when I was doing all the mentorships I was talking about.
Yeah, it was actually on the podcast as well, like a couple of episodes ago.
Yeah, actually, I checked that one out just because I know him. But yeah, his stuff was always very inspiring to me, and taking a class under him definitely, gives you more of a appreciation for what he does and how he does his art as well, and how he treats other people, and he's always, helping people, and basically just, he's kind of how I got my job, actually, because of the mentorship that I did with him. But yeah, those are a few. I can't really think of any other off the top of my head. Actually, what's his name? Gabriel Yegon, I think is his name. I can't remember his last name. Some of these artists have hard names, but but yeah, and then there's also, some of my friends I work with now. Jose was a big inspiration for me when he was here. Um, yeah, along with maybe some of my friends that are still here. Ryan Brothers is a good friend of mine who I helped get a job at Powerhouse as well. But it's always fun to have friends who are also doing what you're doing, so you can kind of compete with each other and help each other out along the way and push each other up. So yeah, those are a couple of the artists that have inspired me or are still inspiring me. There's tons more, of course. There's an infinite amount of people out there that are just really good, but those are a few of the main ones.
All right, and well, we've reached the final question and section of the podcast, which is called Final Words. And all right, let me explain. Imagine in limited amount of time that we have right now, a window of time that there is. You as a human can say anything, a message or messages to someone else, and that someone else is anyone who's listening to this podcast at any point of time in the future. In that situation, what do you have to say?
That's an interesting question to pose. I think kind of maybe along what I was just saying about how, Kaylin is always, willing to help people, and I think that kind of stuck with me since I took his mentorship, is just, paying it forward and, helping anyone that comes along that needs help. Even doesn't even have to be art related. If someone is in trouble, and even if they're not your friend and they ask for help, what's stopping you from helping them? And maybe you'll make a friend if they're not your friend, and you never know. Maybe they'll repay the favor someday down the line. Maybe not. Maybe they'll pay it forward to someone else. That's kind of, the theme I guess I'm going with is being kind and paying forward that kindness that other people give you. And especially in the art field, I feel a similar way that Kaylin does, and that I want to help other people that haven't made it yet or haven't broken into the industry. And so that's kind of why I've made that Wing Fox course with them. And it can be a little pricey. Mentorships are not always the cheapest thing, but it is there for those that want it. And as well as anyone that asks me, I don't think I've ever turned down anyone that's asked me for advice or help or anything in regards to that. I'm not like the most popular artist online, but I do get tons of people that still come to me and they ask me for help or thoughts on something, or they're trying to break into the industry and they ask me to look at a piece of their work or things like that, or just things in life in general. Just be kind to other people around you. You never know what other people are going through. You don't know their situations or their life. So just think about that before you take action.
That's awesome. That's actually a really good note to end this episode on. And well, thank you so much for coming by. Where can people contact you if they had any question? Is your Instagram account okay?
Yeah, my Instagram or my email is on my Instagram, or ArtStation. Those are pretty much my main social media accounts that I use.
All right. And well, thanks so much for coming by, and thank you to anyone who tuned in and listened to this episode or watched it on YouTube. As usual, if there's any suggestions or critiques or anything, leave them down in the comments below, or you can just send me a private message on the podcast page of Instagram. I will check them all out. And well, with that being said, take care everyone. Have a good day. Bye.